Alive. Max, so now that I know that you're in London, I have to invite you here in Brighton. We have, the I360 now, the tallest, static tower in the universe, something like that. So we have a lot of attractions now.
UP Hour Speciale Crypto è organizzato da UP Gang e Marco Montemagno in collaborazione con Leontech. Con una diversificata gamma di oltre 800 certificati quotati in Italia, Leontech offre soluzioni di investimento adatte ad ogni risparmiatore. Visita il sito certificati.leontech.com, esplora un universo di prodotti e seleziona quelli più adatti alle tue esigenze. Leontech, tecnologia ed innovazione al servizio del tuo portafoglio.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to visiting Brighton. I haven't been there in a very, very long time, Marco. And
oh my God, really?
And today for me is like it's Italy Day, because I've just finished a conversation with a friend who runs a vineyard in Tuscany, who's really interested in NFTs. And
really?
after we finish today, I'm going to have lunch with an Italian venture capitalist friend of mine. So today's Italy Day.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yes, NFT for wine. You know that I spoke, I've interviewed Sting recently and his wife, and because they are really into wine.
Yes.
They have their vineyard and so on. And I was talking with his agent, suggesting that they should explore NFT, because actually, I can buy NFTs of their premium bottles. They can store them, but I buy them maybe just as an investment, and then I can resell the NFT. So to me, makes a lot of sense, but I don't think I've really convinced them, unfortunately.
Oh, that's a great shame. I love his music, and his wines have been winning awards. I'm a wine collector, by the way, Marco.
Oh, really? Okay.
When I start talking about wine, I get very nerdy. So try and keep me off that topic today.
By the way, I did the wine tasting, and the new wine is spectacular, really spectacular. It's really good. The red, they got some real premium red. I found it amazing. But yes, I think the problem was that it's not easy to explain to someone that start from scratch, like maybe his agent, and crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin are buzzwords that are very scary for someone that is not into the world or didn't spend some time to study. So I think probably one big effort will be to what we're trying to do here, to try to explain to people who are not into this world what are the opportunities, what are the problems, what's going on. So I think there is a long way to go with that, probably.
There is always an education phase that follows a new technology. You're too young to remember, Marco, but in the mid-90s when
I'm 50 next year, Max? I'm 50 next year, so I was there.
You're looking good, I have to say. But in the mid-90s, when this thing called the World Wide Web came to our attention, it was such a hobbyist thing. And I came across an article, I think from The Guardian in 1996, the other day, that said, this thing will never work. It will never fly. Yeah. It's really just for computer nerds. And now, a few decades later, we use this technology every day, every second of the day. And yet we don't need to understand how the internet works. And so when I try and educate people who really aren't technologists, I do try and get them to think about how we use this technology rather than trying to understand the fundamentals of it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we're still in that education phase. There is no question about that.
What's your main focus in this moment with your company for people who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, sure, Marco. So I'm one of the original founders of Zilliqa Research, which was actually born in 2017. So the Zilliqa Research is now a little over 4 years old. And the project really has been focused on building the engine. the team has some incredible scientists and technologists within it. And, we were amongst the first to really utilize sharding, for example, to achieve high throughput. But we also focused on security, not just at the protocol layer, but at the smart contract layer. And of course, energy efficiency and economic efficiency were also very important to us. But my role today is, as I describe it to people, it's Zilliqa on the outside. So I'm a long-term, I describe myself as a parallel and serial entrepreneur because I've been doing this for a very long time. But my focus today is really Zilliqa on the outside. It's finding use cases, really scalable use cases that I can invest in and that I can bring on top of our blockchain. So my focus is really around building the ecosystem as opposed to being on the inside of Zilliqa, especially because we just 4 weeks ago announced the appointment of a CEO who came from Brave, the browser company. He
was sure. I'm a big Brave user from day one.
Yeah, it's a very cool tech. He helped to build out the tech, and then he helped to roll it out to 40 million users or however many they have today. And so we wanted to bring somebody with that background to the table to really help us to make the platform not just robust, but also accessible to anybody that wants to build on a blockchain.
Brave, by the way, was the first browser to integrate some crypto token and to start to explore the concept of rewarding users. So I always found them very advanced and fascinating the way we're thinking about that. Give me some example, Max, of outside opportunities that you are looking for to bring it in the ecosystem.
So let me give you some examples of things that I have been involved with recently. There are some interesting projects that have yet to be announced, but please do watch the space. It won't be very long before we announce them. But to give you a really good example, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a venture called XCAD, which has recently become a little bit of a darling of the marketplace. So XCAD is a company that has built a very interesting tokenization model for YouTube content creators. And so they've been announcing just a sequence of big YouTube content creators that are now launching their own tokens. And when a fan engages with a video that the creator builds, for example, and watches for more than 80% of the time, they get rewarded in tokens. So for me, this content creator economy is really, really very interesting. And I think it has an enormous future. But I also am really interested in how we, for example, bring the features of blockchain technology to other major industry segments. So I'm very interested in the music industry. I'm also very, very interested in the luxury industry. And so some of my focus at the moment is actually on how we bring blockchain into those enormous industry segments and actually drive some significant change to the way that those industries work.
Very interesting, Max. All right, I'm going to follow you on these three paths. First, creator economy. I love it. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm doing videos now for 8-9 years. So I have this 3 million followers community on all social media, and I every day I think, what are the best business models for creators, for your community? How can I reward my community, for instance? And I started really to think also about the fact that sometimes I can spot a new creator. I give you this example. A couple of years ago, I saw one YouTuber that was unknown, and I thought, wow, this guy's a genius, and then this guy exploded, like million of followers, blah blah blah. And if you are in a sector, you start to know, you get first a first pitch from new talents, new creators. So often you see that some people, probably like startups, like investing in startups, you think, wow, this guy, this girl, they're gonna make it. They have something. The problem is that I never had the opportunity to invest in those creators, not invest financially, but to say, all right, I want to buy your token. I want to buy your stocks. And if you become good, I will, get rewarded too. So I find very fascinating this. And I start to see maybe with NFTs, this start to be possible with tokens. What's the opportunity there? What do you say?
I think it is absolutely about better engagement with your fans, right? I think one of the problems, Marco, with that industry to date has been the simple fact that these creator-focused platforms, in terms of monetization, they reward very, very few, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen how there are, I don't know, I think there are 50 million people now that are creators on the planet today, according to a business report I read out of Colombia just last week. And 2 million of them make 6 figures plus on YouTube alone. But that's still a really tiny proportion, because most of those people that are content creators today earn less than the kind of the basic level of wage here in the UK, for example,
Right.
if we look at numeric terms. So I think that what you're saying is absolutely correct, in that there are rising stars, and if you spot them early enough, and you're lucky enough to find them, and you're lucky enough to be part of the monetization program behind them, then you've done good. But I would say that that's a little bit like a lottery ticket. And therefore, I think that, and also because I think that there's a little bit of influencer fatigue right now as well, especially through the pandemic. I believe that what we need to do is we need to have talent scouts like yourself, like you were describing that you've been doing. You need talent scouts that scour all 4 corners of the net, in trying to find these people, whether they're 12 years old or 72 years old is irrelevant now. It doesn't really matter. But we need to find people that can engage with large audiences, but at the same time, not just at the platform level, but perhaps at the application layer, we need to support ventures that allow those people to actually make a living. It's the age-old problem, Marco. I always give people the example of how Picasso had to sell paintings just so that he could eat lunch, right? Back in the day. And I think today the same thing is true for all artists, whether they're creating music or they're actors and actresses, and now, of course, people that are content creators. You have to find ways for them to make a living. Otherwise, we're going to lose precious talent, right? Because they'll go off and do something else. And so I think, as I say, I think the answer is you've got to work really hard to scout for these people, and then you've got to find ventures that are building things on top of platforms that enable monetization for really talented people. That's my view.
I like, for instance, the utility NFTs opportunity. I recently carefully watched the Gary V Friends project. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I know.
And I found it very fascinating because instead of being a simple collectible, all right, piece of art that you can like or not, there is a utility there. So you can, if you buy the NFT, you can go to his physical event. Or if you buy certain NFTs, you can have access to play table tennis against him, or to have a one-to-one conversation, or a group consultancy. I mean, you can have access to the creator. And this auction obviously create a momentum, and so it's an interesting business model. And then you can resell the NFT, and with the smart contract, you get a percentage, but you'll get an investment out of it. So I think that's very interesting, the utility NFT. I will try to launch mine in January. And I think that's a very interesting way to approach the problem, maybe to solve the monetization problem.
I think you and I share the same line of thought here, and I'd love to see what it is you're going to be launching in January, because I feel that whilst we have this year seen this enormous explosion in interest in NFTs, predominantly, I think initially very much from the perspective of art, digital art. I think we are still very much in the experimentation phase. And as I say to people, we're at the tip of the iceberg. So for me, okay, if I pay, whether I pay $50 or I pay $50,000 for a piece of digital art, how often am I really going to go and take a look at it? Unless I can maybe project it in my home theater or something and show it off to friends at drinks parties, what purpose does it serve? So I think that your notion of utility is a very important one. And as I was saying, I've been researching the luxury goods industry very carefully for about the last year or so. And I see very, very interesting use cases for major luxury brands in this space. But unless there is utility, or in my opinion, unless you can marry the digital with the physical in some way or other, where this is maybe how you get your utility, right? You can look at a picture of your handbag, but you can actually use your handbag too. Yeah. And it's a limited edition. So I think that utility, whether it be at the digital level or maybe at the counterpart physical level, is where things become really interesting. And in my opinion, again, this is where we start to maybe tackle this enormous issue of illicit trade in the luxury goods world, for example. It's not just the luxury goods world. It's also, as you know, the wine and spirits industry is dogged with illicit trade. So again, I'm with you. I think finding utility at an NFT level is how we're going to create long duration.
Yeah, and also the relationship with the community, I think, is a stronger bond, because if I can really give to my community access to what I do, or I don't know, if I write a book, it's only for my community, for instance, or the audiobook is only for the community, the token holders or the NFT holders. So I think it's interesting about the luxury industry. Who is Dolce & Gabbana? They sold these NFT of a digital outfit, but then you got also the physical one, and then you had access to their store, and so they mixed it. Phygital, I don't know if you say like that.
Yes.
So I liked it. It probably is going in the direction that you're talking about.
Yes, I think so. But also, look, you're an entrepreneur, as am I, Marco. I think that when we talk to these sorts of organizations, but particularly people that are in the luxury goods world, for them to just jump on a bandwagon because it's trendy is not enough, right? Yeah. Ultimately, there has to be a commercial basis for why a luxury brand might decide to produce an NFT, perhaps with a physical counterpart. And for me, the answer is that it's access to new market. It's absolutely about accessing new markets. There are luxury brands that I absolutely adore and love, which today I probably couldn't wear. You probably could. I couldn't
Mm.
wear. And the reason for that is that the shift in product, but also the customer focus, the target customer, has changed in the last 12 to 15 years. And therefore, we're seeing evolution of brands and their product lines as they begin to see new markets. I mean, for me, I see massive wealth being created in the crypto segment, for example, today. And there's an entire marketplace full of people there that I think would be incredible customers for large luxury brands, whether it be automobiles or people that make shirts,
I also think, Max, that the psychology of the crypto community, I know is a broad generalization, but a lot of friends that I have in the sector, if they have to buy something in crypto, swiping up, one of their wallet and buying, they will buy with premium price, and they don't even care, about the cost. If they have to buy something even cheap, but they have to, use fiat currency, credit card, you already have friction there. So that's an interesting point. Once you create a product or a service for the crypto community, they have a different way to think about money or how to purchase something. So it's something to consider probably for a luxury brand or in general for every company.
Absolutely, Marco. And because, of course, in my portfolio, I have a layer 1 protocol. It starts there because we have to make these technologies, firstly, far easier for people to utilize and work with. Whether it's a large enterprise or a brand or an SME or even a startup, these people shouldn't need to worry about how blockchains work. So integrating into such platforms is a major starting point. And then, as you say, if you happen to be in the crypto world and you know how to make payments using wallets, well, great. But there's a huge world out there of people I want to tackle that don't even know what a wallet is. And so, this again, I think will come. But it's about making the technology far easier to use and interoperable. I think interoperability is also a key word here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say that the biggest obstacle that I have, for instance, for my NFT project, is that the moment I will launch it on an Italian market, even if our Italian abroad, the problem is that you have to first explain what an NFT is, then you have to say where you buy. All right, you go on OpenSea, yes, but now you need a MetaMask wallet. Wow. And now you need the 12 words. Okay. And now you need to move some Ethereum there. Good. But how do I buy Ethereum? And then you lost already 90% of the of the community. So it's still not there. It's true that PayPal in UK and they will come. I mean, Facebook wallet, whatever. At the moment, there are so many problems. Also, as a company, to move some balance sheet. I mean, I always listen to Michael Saylor approach, and I really admire what he's doing. But it's still hard, to do the KYC, having a business account on an exchange. It's not that you just open a bank account. It's not like that. So it's still, early days. But the moment that technology is there and is more invisible, then the adoption will be massive.
I agree fully. I fully agree with you. Really agree.
One thing about music. You mentioned music. So recently, Gary Vaynerchuk was giving this example. Imagine that you had the opportunity to buy the first Nirvana album. I don't know, what's your favorite singer or music group, Max?
I love music so much. I'm a big jazz fan, for example, right? Big jazz fan.
All right. What's your number one jazz
artist?
Yeah.
I love Bill Evans.
Okay, Bill Evans. Or imagine that you were able to buy first Bill Evans album, and then it was an NFT. And you got the album, you got the music and the cover and everything, the art, but then you also got a percentage of the revenues for all the streaming revenues that he got in perpetuity. Wow, that for me is something incredible. Of course, I see a lot of problems there. Accounting problems, taxing problems, legal problems. I mean, I see a lot of problems in this prediction, but I find it very, very fascinating. And the same for a creator. The next time I write a book, I can share part of the profit with my community or the early adopter. So that I find it very interesting. I don't know when and how we get there, but I wanted your take on this.
Yeah, so I think that this is where I absolutely love being in this space today, because this blockchain technology is a real leveler. You know, we were talking about how Picasso had to sell paintings so he could feed himself lunch, for example, right? And the plight of the artist, whether it be painters or musicians especially, is a long-standing debate, right? So the producers make, let's face it, they make the vast amount of profit from finding and launching talented musicians. But today, with this technology, we actually can turn that on its head, because the smart contract layer and the NFT actually help us to do something that was really almost impossible to do before, which is programmable payment and putting logic onto a blockchain that already gives you authenticity of a piece of music, for example. And then being able to provide a trail of payments to artists over however long you want, generations if you want, is such a game changer. It's an absolute game changer for the industry. And I think, as I say, watch this space. I think we're going to be seeing some really, really exciting music industry-based NFT applications that are being launched by people from within the industry. And that's when, for me, things get really interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I recently saw this project. I think it's called Audius, Audius, Audius. And the idea, again, is that is a sort of Spotify, but you have a token. So you, as musician or creator, got rewarded, but also your community can be involved in the ecosystem economy. And in video game, something similar, this Axie Infinity. I yesterday evening I was chatting with one of my children, and I thought, wow, this is the first time that instead of always paying for Fortnite or all the video games, you can actually earn by playing. Yes. You earn, which is cool. I mean, why you always have to spend? So that's changing a lot of things in every sector. So what do you think is necessary to make it happen, and how long will it take? And if you could say, I mean, the first industries that will change will be, I don't know, music again, like it happened with Napster in the old days. What's your prediction on this?
I think, Marco, a number of things have to happen, right? At the technological level, obviously, we were talking about the fact that blockchain layer ones especially need to ensure that their platforms are economically and energy efficient, right? All of those good things that we already know about. But secondly, beyond that, I think that we've got to make the technology much, much more accessible to people, whether they're children or whether they're, CEOs of large enterprises. They've got to be able to understand very quickly and easily how they interact with this thing that we call blockchain. I think that I know it's an ugly word, but I'm afraid we have to face up to it. There is also this prospect of regulation, and we cannot ignore the elephant in the room. I mean, at the moment, whether you look at the UK or the EU, which are the places I probably most understand, it looks to me like NFTs, because they are unique, they're non-fungible assets. They probably fall outside of regulation, but as soon as we start getting into fractionalized NFTs, as soon as we
Yeah.
start to create secondary markets, I think that, you know, we have to also work with regulation. To me, it's not an ugly word, by the way.
Oh, it's a great thing, because in
It's
this
a
way
very
you know, you have certainty, and you say, all right, if I
correct,
invest in this space, this is what I can do. I
correct.
think probably, what do you think? Bitcoin at the moment, I see it like that it passes, it has passed the I don't know how you call it in English, the moment of no return, you know. Until
Yes.
this moment, I thought maybe Bitcoin will go back, maybe will be bad, and now I see, you know, ETF, SEC, and green light, let's say, and a lot of investors, banks, and so, but a lot of other projects that are not an asset, a property, but are, you know, securities or cryptocurrencies. I don't know. I definitely believe there will be a lot of regulation and a lot of cleaning of the space, probably.
Yes, I agree with you. And look, ultimately, it's good for the consumer. Okay, this is what the regulator really worries about. Is it cannot harm the consumer. And I agree with you fully that BTC has helped all of us in whatever we're doing in this space, because it has now become it's become accepted. You know, I speak to a lot of financial institutions, and my God, the amount of interest, actually not just in investing in BTC or creating funds around it, but actually, you know, traditional financial institutions asking about how they can use blockchain platforms for their own businesses is for me it's a tipping point. It's a major tipping point.
You mentioned interoperability. Final
Mhm.
question, and then I'll let you go, Max. I see so many chains, and even if I'm passionate about this sector, I'm an ignorant, but I'm trying to, you know, understand a little bit more. Sometimes I really don't understand. I mean, Algorand, Polkadot, Elrond, you know, there are so many. What's the situation there? I mean, should I expect that only one chain will survive? There will be specialized chains. How does it work?
Okay, so I'll take you back to the 90s, Marco. In the 90s, there were these things called enterprise software. So
Yeah,
Oracle, SAP, PeopleSoft, and they were all fighting to become almost monopolies, right? Back in the day. And then what happened is that large enterprises realized that they needed a mix of all of these things. And that gave birth to an entire industry that we call the system integration
yeah,
industry today.
yeah,
You know, firms like IBM or Accenture, these sorts of firms, they grew up on the back of that because enterprises needed one piece of tech to talk to another piece of tech. They weren't ever just going to go with one thing. In my opinion, I do believe that history does rhyme, you know, and I foresee exactly the same thing happening here. We're still very, very early stage. You know, to me, it's still 1996. We're using the Netscape browser. Google
yeah.
hasn't even been born yet. But things are happening so quickly and so fast. But if that's going to continue, then interoperability has to come into play, right? Yeah, I mean, for for people that are watching this, just imagine if I have a Gmail account and Marco has a Yahoo email account, and the two don't talk to each other. What it may be brilliant, but what use is that?
Yeah.
Or you know, I don't know, an Android phone can't call an iOS phone, right? What use is that? So interoperability in tech has historically been that's when things go ballistic. And today there are chains that are working on solving this. I mean, we at Zilliqa, we've just launched an ETH to ZIL bridge, for example, right?
What is it?
So it allows assets that have been created on the Ethereum blockchain to be ported, if you like, across to the Silica chain. Because the one thing we've managed to solve is the energy efficiency and the economic efficiency. So our gas fees are tiny, you know, our energy burn is tiny, and those things really, really matter. But I think I'm a collaborator, and for me, chains working together becomes massively important because, you know, again, think about it today. Because there's a lack of direct interoperability between Bitcoin and Ethereum, that actually does it creates a barrier to the growth of the DeFi marketplace, for example, right? And therefore, I think that for L1s like ourselves, although we're all working hard to release feature after feature after feature, what we have to turn our attention to, and people are beginning to do that now. I'm not saying they aren't. We have to now turn our attention to you know, cross-chain transactions becoming possible, making blockchain transactions really easy to happen, multi-token transactions. All of these things have to happen, and they can only happen if interoperability comes into play, right? And interoperability simply means it's just the ability for blockchain networks to talk to and share data with each other in a safe and secure way. That's what it means. But
Right.
you think about my examples of email and mobile usage today, that's where we got to get to.
Great point. I was curious, a final curiosity. I will stay here with you talking for hours, but I know that you have to work. Who do you think will be the next big tech to jump on the crypto world? Do you have any prediction on it? I don't know, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, that for real, they will make an announcement and say, starting tomorrow, you know, this is what we do. Not obviously they are all working on it, but announcing officially with a global project that will really have an impact.
It's a question that's uppermost in a lot of people's minds right now, whether they're investors or stock pickers or just people that are interested in tech, right? But following on from what we heard Mr. Zuckerberg say about Facebook, for example, and turning it into a metaverse-based company, if we think about more traditional tech companies or more traditional business models, logistics being a fantastic one. So if we pick Amazon, for example, you know, for Amazon to think about building metaverse plays makes a huge amount of sense to me, right? So I think we are going to see people like this who are already in the business of, you know, being able to distribute and sell products all over the world. But in this post-pandemic world where people have become so used to just sitting in front of a computer and buying things and then having them delivered the next day, surely the next evolution in that has to be able to, you know, to walk around in a metaverse, playing music to yourself and picking things you want to buy. So I suspect it might be somebody like that, Marco, but who's to know? Also, in the metaverse, Amazon could deliver instantly. Because you click and immediately appear something. So that would be good. Excellent. Max, was really, really interesting to talk with you. I'm waiting for you in Brighton, and I'll meet you in London at the first opportunity. I really look forward to it. Thank you for having me on the show, Marco. It was an absolute pleasure. Okay, ciao.
I'll see you soon.